Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be covering fractional addition, and we're going to also include a couple different examples for how to illustrate the concepts to anybody you might be working with. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we're just going to start with a couple different vocabulary terms and basic concepts that are going to come out throughout the video. So what is a fraction? A fraction is basically a part of a whole. So in this circle you can see it's divided into 4 different parts, and has 4 parts, so one of these sections is 1/4. The number on the top is called the numerator, and it describes how many parts out of the whole we have. The number on the bottom is called the denominator, and it describes how many total parts there are. Alright, so kicking us off first, we're going to start with same denominator addition, which same denominator addition refers to when the number on the bottom is the same for both fractions. So in this example here, we have 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 2/4. So in this case, we know it's same denominator because both fractions have a 4 on the bottom. And basically the process is just to add the numbers on the top and keep the number on the bottom the same. And so we can see it illustrated out here too a little bit. We're adding these 2 parts together in this circle. Now the tricky part here is often when you add fractions, you may have to end up reducing the fraction. And in this case, 2/4 is equal to 1/2. So how do we get there? Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to check if the top number and the bottom number can be divided by any numbers that are the same. So in this instance, we can see you could divide 2 by 2, and you can also divide 4 by 2. So we're just going to divide 2 divided by 2 and 4 divided by 2, and then we're going to get 1/2. And so that's going to always be the process. Sometimes it might be a little trickier to figure out which numbers you're supposed to do that with, and it's not so simple when you look at bigger numbers and it can feel kind of confusing. But that's always just kind of the basic process, seeing if there's any numbers in common. Yeah, so now we're going to go over a couple examples of ways to illustrate some of these concepts to anybody you might be working with. Alright, so one of my favorite ways to talk about fractions is counting money, because it's kind of exciting for kids. It's kind of intuitive to adults, like everybody's used to using quarters and stuff. And so basically, a simple example would be 4 quarters equal $1. So looking at the same example we just did, you have 1/4 here and 1/4 here, and you add them together, you get $1/2. So working with money, counting with money is a great way to just kind of practice and to get some familiarity with the concepts. Another way to illustrate the concepts is with baking or water in baking cups. So we can do the same example we did if we just do 2 quarter cups equal 1/2 cup. And a way I like to think about this is when I was trying to bake when I was younger, or often still now, could never find the measuring cups that I needed. So if you're kind of in the kitchen and you're trying to figure out, like, I don't have a 1/2 cup, how can I make it out of other different cups? And kind of doing those kind of exercises can be really great for gaining familiarity as well, and just kind of making some of these abstract concepts feel a little bit more real. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is different denominator addition. This just means that the number on the bottom for each fraction is not the same. So in this instance, we have 1/4 plus 1/2, and we're basically going to have to just first make sure that the numbers on the bottom can be turned into something that is the same, and then do the same thing we did as before. So we are going to find a common denominator first. This just means converting one or both of the fractions to something that can then have the same number on the bottom, so you can add them together, just like we did before. So we got 1/4 plus 1/2. 1/2, as we saw in the last example, is also equal to 2/4. And so basically we can just go, okay, 1/4 plus 2/4 equals 3/4, which you can also see illustrated on the right-hand side here. So the process for finding a common denominator can sometimes be a little tricky. So in this case, 4 can be divided by 2, So we can get a common number by multiplying 1/2 by 2 over 2, so just multiplying 1 times 2 and 2 times 2, yielding 2 over 4. And so then we got the same number on the bottom, we can just add them together. But if you're not sure what common denominator is, it always will work to multiply each fraction by the other one's denominators. So I've got a little trickier example here where you can see 1/3 plus 1/4. And in this instance, 4 can't be divided by 3, 3 can't be divided by 4. There's nothing that you could just like easily multiply 3 by to get 4. So in this instance, we can just multiply 1/3 by 4. And the reason it's written out in this way with like 4 over 4 is because technically it's like 4 divided by 4 is 1. So we're not changing what this value here is worth. We're just kind of like altering the way it looks. So we're just going to multiply the top number by the same number as we multiply the bottom number. And that's something we can just always do in math, and that's fine, as long as you do the same thing to the bottom that you do to the top. So we've got 1/3 times 4 over 4 plus 1/4 times 3 over 3. And that's going to give us 4/12, because 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3/12. And now we can just add them together like we did before. So we got 3 plus 4 is 7, and we got 7/12. And that's a little bit harder to illustrate kind of with measuring cups or different things. So for kind of demos, it makes more sense to work with kind of smaller fractions that are kind of easier to just look at. But you can do this process for any kind of giant numbers. And sometimes it might be hard if you're looking at like 1 over 47 plus 2 over 26 to know like what would be the lowest common denominator. So sometimes I'll just do this trick and then I'll reduce the fraction and I'll just kind of puzzle it out that way, because sometimes it's a little bit tricky to know, like just looking at numbers, what would the common denominator be. So looking at how we can illustrate this concept, oil and water is a really great way because we can just see how the different fractions add together, but also like the total at the same time. So we can see 1/2 cup plus 1/4 cup equals 3/4 cups. So that's a pretty simple way to kind of be like, look, it works, and not too tricky to set up, and pretty fun for kids, and also a nice little introductory concept option to the whole hydrophobicity, which is pretty cool. Alright, that does it for this video, so please feel free to email homeschoolforquestions@gmail.com if you have any of your own questions you'd like some help with, and please subscribe to @homeschool for parents so you don't miss any updates.